There are moments in history when reality screams louder than any theory. While the world rushes to catch up on scandals, wars, and new technologies, something much bigger is happening. Prophecies over 2,500 years old are being fulfilled before our eyes, and almost no one is paying attention. What was once just sacred text is now revealed in satellite imagery, population records, and unquestionable fact. This is not about institutional religion. It is about the literal fulfillment of promises made millennia ago, in a territory that the world has always wanted to erase, but which continues to flourish. Israel. The scriptures were not vague. They pointed out names, places, situations, and even numbers. Ezekiel, for example, wrote that the people of Israel would be scattered among the nations, but would one day return. Jeremiah spoke of a time when these people would return to possess the promised land. And Daniel, with astonishing precision, revealed signs that would precede the end of all things. You don't have to be a theologian to understand. The signs are all there. The return of the Jews, the rebuilding of the biblical cities, the deserts giving way to plantations, and Jerusalem becoming the center of world debate. The question is not whether it is happening. The question is, why are we still ignoring it? Imagine a dry land, cracked by the sun, without trees, without hope. Now visualize that same land exporting fruits, flowers, agricultural technology. Does it sound like a fairy tale? Well, that is exactly what is happening to the territory of Israel. What the prophets described as, "the desert will blossom," is no longer a metaphor. It's a hidden headline that the mainstream media doesn't want to show. According to the Israeli government itself, billions of dollars are generated by agriculture in areas that were previously considered unproductive. The prophecy has become a statistic. But the most disturbing thing about all this is not just what is happening to the land, it is what is happening to the people. Entire families from more than 100 nations are returning to inhabit the promised land. This is not a migration trend. It is a spiritual alignment. It is as if God Himself is gathering His people, calling them one by one back to the place where it all began, fulfilling word for word what He promised in Ezekiel 37:21-22. Most news reports treat this as a demographic, but those who know the scriptures see clearly. We are witnessing a time of restoration, not just of land or borders, but of a promise. Israel did not become a nation again by political force. It rose from the ashes because of a divine decree preserved through the centuries. Every Jew who sets foot in that land is like a prophetic piece fitting into God's grand plan for the end times. To deny this is to close one's eyes to the supernatural that is blatantly evident in the natural. And if the prophecies about Israel are being fulfilled in the smallest details, what can we say about the next ones? If God is fulfilling with such precision what He promised 2,500 years ago, what is the next event on the divine agenda? Many still scoff. Others prefer not to think about it. But those who have spiritual eyes have already noticed. The prophetic clock is ticking faster. And as Jesus said, "Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." This is not a video to cause fear. It is a warning to those who still believe that the Bible is just an old book. It is alive, and it is being fulfilled now. When the prophets predicted that the desert would bloom, many considered it poetry. But now, what was once a metaphor has become headline news. Israel, a country with more than 60% of its territory as desert, is exporting fruits, flowers, vegetables, and agricultural technology to dozens of nations. In the last year alone, billions of dollars have been generated from harvesting crops on land that was once barren. This is not just scientific advancement. It is the earth obeying the Creator's command, as He Himself promised in Ezekiel 36, "I will turn to you, and you will be plowed and sown." Anyone who travels through Israel today witnesses the impossible happening naturally. Plantations spring up in areas where no one dared to plant. Greenhouses cover the soil where there was once dust and stone. Spiritual eyes see that prophecy is springing from the ground. The fulfillment of the word is visible, not hidden in codes or forced interpretations. It is factual. The seeds were planted, but it was God Himself who made them grow. Isaiah 35 had already anticipated, "The desert will rejoice and blossom like the rose." And now, doesn't this deserve to be headline news all over the world? The most disturbing thing is that these signs are not happening in secret. They are visible in satellite images, UN reports, economic charts, But few connect this to what the prophet said. The world looks on and calls it development, but those who know Scripture know is greeting. What seemed dead now breathes. What seemed forgotten now thrives, and not by chance. There is a divine agenda underway, and the earth, once silent, now cries out with its fruits. God is faithful to His word. This blossoming is not just physical, it is spiritual. Every planting, every harvest, carries a reminder. God has not forgotten His promise. He has not given up on His people, nor has He abandoned the land where He promised to establish His name. Every tree that bears fruit, every vineyard that grows where there was once abandonment, is a sacred reminder. The time of fulfillment has come. It's not just about agriculture. It's about divine restoration, visible, measurable, and yet ignored by so many. Israel's agricultural miracle is already being studied by scientists around the world. But the real miracle lies not in the technology, but in the literal fulfillment of millennia-old promise. Prophets like Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Amos saw this time of restoration. They wrote about it in detail, and now, centuries later, what they described is before us, and most people carry on as if nothing is happening, maybe out of fear, maybe out of ignorance, maybe because acknowledging this would mean admitting that the next event on the prophetic agenda is near. And what would be that next step? The people returned, the land flourished, but something is still missing in God's plan: spiritual recognition, because a mere geographical return is not enough. God is preparing Israel and the world for something much greater, and while He fulfills the ancient promises, a new call echoes: "Awake, you who sleep, and arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light." This call is for me, it is for you, and the time is now. Imagine a devastating scene. An entire valley covered in bone. There is no life. There is no sound. Only the silence of a nation that seemed extinct. This was the vision that God gave to the prophet Ezekiel. A desolate, hopeless picture. But there, where the end seemed decreed, God revealed a plan. Prophesy over these bones, and they will live. What seemed to be a symbol of the end has become a sign of a new beginning. And this vision, recorded in chapter 37 of Ezekiel, is being fulfilled. Not in allegory, but in concrete reality, before our eyes. For centuries the Jewish people lived scattered, without land, without a common language, without a government, slaughtered in persecutions, silenced by empires, survivors of the Holocaust. The world saw these dry bones. The very existence of Israel seemed impossible. But God did not forget the vision, and as promised, He began to gather the bones, cover them with flesh, and breathe into them the breath of life. Today, Israel lives, a nation restored, a language revived, a land reclaimed. It is not just history, it is prophecy incarnate. Every new child learning Hebrew, every Jew returning to the promised land, every flag raised over Jerusalem, all of it echoes the sound of what Ezekiel heard: bones joining, sinews forming, flesh forming. That dead nation now breathes, and it does not breathe because of human merit. It breathes because God said He would breathe life into it again. "Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel," said the Lord, and He Himself is fulfilling it now, in the time in which we live. This process was not instantaneous. It was progressive, as the vision itself shows. First the bones, then the tendons, then the flesh, only finally, the breath of life. This is also what happened in reality. First came the territorial restoration, then the cultural one, and now, the spiritual awakening is approaching. The next breath will come upon the Spirit. Many already realize this, others still resist. But the prophetic sequence is advancing, and it can no longer be ignored. To deny that Ezekiel 37 is ongoing is like seeing the bodies standing and yet saying that the bones are still in the ground. The fulfillment is clear, visible, traceable. The question that remains is, are we alert for what comes next? Because the same God who restored a nation can also restore lives, families, hearts. But just as there was a right time for the bones to be gathered together, there is a right time for the final breath, and this time is much closer than most people imagine. While the world remains distracted, God's plan is still in place. Bones are coming together. Voices are being awakened. And if He fulfilled this vision so absurd to human eyes, what else can He do? We are seeing a prophecy that seemed impossible to make headlines. And if the bones have come back to life, perhaps it is time to ask, are we also ready to get up? On a planet with more than 8 billion people, there is a city with less than 1 million inhabitants that never leaves the headlines. It has no oil, no strategic coastline, no outstanding mineral wealth, and yet Jerusalem has become the most contested point on earth. Politicians fight over it, nations debate its future, religions clash over every square meter of its surface. Why? Because there is something bigger going on there, something that prophets had foretold long before modern empires existed. In the book of Zechariah, chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, it is written, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about. I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered against her." This prophecy is not symbolic. It is literal, current, visible in any international newspaper, in UN resolutions, in diplomatic debates, in religious protests. Jerusalem has become the epicenter of global tension, just as God said it would be. And this is no coincidence. It is by design. The most striking thing is to see the contrast. The world looks at Jerusalem with geopolitical eyes, but those who know the Word see something much deeper. Jerusalem is God's clock for the final events. It is not just the capital of Israel. It is the city of the great King, the stage where the final chapters of human history will unfold. That is why everything revolves around it. It is not politics. It is prophecy. And the more the world tries to control Jerusalem, the more Scripture is fulfilled with surgical precision. While many debate the future of the city, God has already declared His plan. Jerusalem does not belong to men. It belongs to the Lord, and that is why no attempt to fully dominate it will succeed without conflict. The prophets have spoken, the signs have been given, and the nations remain as if mesmerized. The very fact that so many are trying to define the destiny of such a small city is confirmation that the supernatural is shaping the natural without the powerful noticing. Anyone who walks through Jerusalem today sees a vibrant, rebuilt place, full of history and spirituality. But they also see tension, surveillance, cameras, soldiers. It is a city that is alive and wounded at the same time, as if it were waiting for something. Because it is. The city that was once the scene of the temple, the sacrifice, the resurrection, and the ascension, will still be the scene of the return. Jerusalem is not just a memory, it is a prophetic future, and everything that happens in it carries eternal implication. When you hear about Jerusalem in the news again, remember, this is not just international politics. It is the hand of God moving the needle of time. Every resolution, every conflict, every debate, it is as if heaven is shouting, "Wake up!" Because if Jerusalem is in the center, it is because the last chapters are already being written, and the spiritual world is moving. Time is short, and preparation is urgent. For centuries, cities mentioned in the Bible were treated as archaeological ruins, dust, stones, silence. But today, these same cities are standing. They are full of life, commerce, housing. Jerusalem, Shiloh, Megiddo, Beersheba, Ashkelon, all of them are being restored before the eyes of the world. And this is not a simple urbanization project. It is the exact fulfillment of the promise recorded in Amos 9. They will rebuild the ruined cities and inhabit them. I will plant them in their own land, and they will never again be uprooted. Clear words. And now, visible. Ezekiel had also prophesied, I will multiply men upon you, and the cities shall be inhabited, and the ruins shall be rebuilt. This is not the kind of text that is interpreted allegorically. It is literal. It is historical. It is current. Israel spent centuries in exile, without a government, without a language, without a national identity. But now, a population that has surpassed 10 million, cities reborn, families living on the land that God promised. And this forces us to stop and reflect. If all this is already happening, what else is missing? This kind of fulfillment has no parallel in any other civilization. No people has been dispersed for 2 millennia and then re-established themselves as a sovereign nation in the same territory, with the same faith and the same language. Only Israel. And this should be enough for any Christian to understand that we are not living in normal times. The prophetic agenda is being fulfilled. And those who insist on treating all this as chance or coincidence is ignoring the signs that God has purposely placed in your path. The return of the people, the land flourishing, Jerusalem at the center, the cities rebuilt. All the signs point in the same direction. God is calling, not to discuss eschatology, but to awaken lives, not to try to predict dates, but to prepare hearts, because the question is no longer whether the prophecies are being fulfilled. The question now is, what does this require of us? The answer is not in a video. It is in the heart of each person who hears this message and recognizes the time has come to take Scripture seriously. Jesus warned us, "Therefore keep watch, for you do not know on what day your Lord will come." The watchfulness he calls for is not paranoia. It is positioning. It is living each day as if it were your last, not out of fear, but out of purpose. With each city rebuilt, with each prophecy fulfilled, heaven is saying, time is running out, and anyone who doesn't have their lights on runs the risk of being caught off guard. It is not the end of the world. It is the beginning of a decisive time, a time that demands faith, clarity, and courage. So if this message awakened you, write in the comments, "Jesus, I want to be ready." Not out of commitment, but as an act of faith, because this simple gesture can strengthen other hearts that also need to rise up. The Scriptures are alive, and their word never returns void. What seemed impossible is already happening. The last key has been turned, and the next move will not be made by men, but by heaven. May God find us prepared, with our eyes open, and our hearts burning for the truth.